Ran a business, if you don't know how to run a business, running a business is not easy. First, we have to define what a business is, right? If you are a real estate agent, you're not running a business. If you are if you are online and you are trying to sell something, Shopify, that sort of thing, you are not a business, right? Uh, a business is you have risk that you take on, you have employees that you are using to do that, you have recurring revenues, you have customer bases, and it is dependent upon, again, the money coming out, the employees earning you money, and you keeping what's left over at the end. This is how I'm defining a business. Now, if you have that Shopify store, if you're doing some sort of drop shipping program, all of that, fine. But if you're a solopreneur, it's not a business. You are a solopreneur, you are in business, but it's not a business. I just want to define that. So when I talk about a business, I talk about, in my own example, at the same time I owned car washes, gas stations, convenience stores, transportation company, financial business, a woodworking business. I was developing houses. I owned commercial real estate. I was building developments. I was remodeling homes, all at the same time doing $25 million a year. That is a business, a legit business, and multiple businesses all at the same time. If you don't have experience running one business, you can't run three businesses, and you should not be. Before anybody gets too excited, starts telling me about how I know this guy, you don't really know any guys, because on the internet, you can say and make it look like anything that you want to. A perfect idea, I used to push back on this and I just gave it up, is the dude would say, I did a business last month and it brought in $30,000. Look at what I did. And my question is always, oh, that's fantastic. How much money did you make? I don't care. If you brought in 30,000 and you spent 30,000, you don't have a business. That's zero. So this idea that revenue equals a business or sales equals a business is just not true. So we want to make sure that we define what a business is. But if you asked me, somebody is going to open a laundromat and then is going to go open a car wash and then is going to go open a gas station, I would tell you that's not the way to go about it. I would try to do one first, master that, get experience there, and then go to the second one, because one is hard, two is harder, and three and four and five gets exponentially more difficult. So stacking income streams is an internet influencer retarded term that no normal everyday human being should use unless you want to waste 50 or 100 or 250 bucks on a program that one of these morons want to sell you, explaining to you how you too can do that. But look, if you want to have a lawn mowing business and you mow $25,000 a year worth of lawns, meanwhile, maybe you've got a collection or you've got a investment business of some sort, and you want to, you want to invest your own money and play the market and do that sort of thing, fine. And then if you want to have, a collection business where you're trading in collectibles, you get baseball cards, whatever it might be, and that maybe generates $10,000. That's good, but that's a hobby. That's not a business. And so I want to define truly what a business is. And my example, I've already given it. So in that context, I would say no, absolutely not. That'd be stupid. But 3 to 4 small things, we need to define small. What is small? Small is, again, $25,000 a year, $50,000 a year, $100,000 a year that you're making money at, that you can define that you're making money at, that you can show that you're making money at, and that it's worth the time. I don't mean making $5 an hour. I mean making money that's worth your time. Then I might change my the way that I look at it and say, okay, if you do that, add another one on top of it, doing something else, add another one on top of it, doing something else. That's great. But having businesses for the sake of having businesses, it just makes no sense. And that is what most people do. I have these conversations all the time. What do you do? I have 3 businesses. Okay, what are they specifically? And generally, they're never any businesses between the 3 of them. They're all things that are going to happen, quote unquote. I'm going to push here, I'm going to push here, I'm going to push there. And I always say, how about pick the one that you're best at and push on that one? And I think that ultimately answers the question. Having a hobby that you can maybe make a few bucks at, that's great. Why do you have the hobby? Do you have the hobby to make money, or do you have the hobby because this is what you like doing? If it's what you like doing, then you're limiting yourself to what you might be able to do better, right? Something that maybe you're better at, but you don't like doing as much. And then go do that thing that you're better at, that you can sell more of, that you can sell more of at a profit. And that profit, then take it back and go follow your hobby. So just because you like doing it doesn't mean it's a business. Just because you treat it like a business, unless it's making money, it's growing, it's generating an income that then you can live on, or at least subsidize what you're doing, you're going to have trouble. That's just not the way to go about it from my perspective. There are very few people in this world that make a living doing things that they love. And you have to remember that. Is
Mhm.
your hobby something that you're doing because you love doing it and you'd like to make a living out of it? Or do you have something that you're better at that you could sell, like I said, things profitably at, and then take that profit and follow your passion? Stop listening to social media is the reality. Or find somebody on social media that is telling you the truth. And the truth is that if you think you're going to buy a new business and have someone else run it for you, you are not listening to the right people, or you're fooling yourself. And if you think that you're the one that's going to do it differently than everybody else, then you're just being dumb. That's just stupid, because that's not reality. Look, let me break it down for you. If you're going to buy a business, let's say you're going to buy that laundromat, and that laundromat, you got to pay $200,000 for the laundromat. You are paying a multiple 3 to 5 times that laundromat's typically it's EBITDA income, earnings before taxes. I'm blanking, before taxes, interest, depreciation. It's going to be the leftover money. Then they take however much money there is left over, net of those things, net of whatever money that the owners are taking out of it. That number is going to be, let's say you pay 200 grand for the thing. So let's say that number was 50 grand a year, and you're paying a 4-time multiple on 50 grand a year, 200 grand. So you've got to pay that out over 5 or 7 years, depending on if you get a loan or you use your own money, but it needs to be over some amount of time. Let's say you're going to pay it out over 4 years. That means that to get the 200 grand back, the company's making 50 grand. You got to take the 50 grand and pay back that 200,000. So you're working for free for the next 4 years. Where does the money come from? Where does the money come from to do this? Where's the money come from to pay somebody else to run the business for you? Because you're paying for the business as if there is no manager managing the business typically. So laundromats are not full-time management. I get it. But there is no such thing as a passive income for a business. So to think that there is just, again, you're taking bad advice. But these things are sold to us because it sounds good to people who want out of their jobs, who want to become an entrepreneur. The idea that being an entrepreneur is sexy and it's fun, and you're going to live in the south of France 2 weeks out of every month, and you're going to work 4 hours a week, and the rest of the time is on a yacht, which is how it is portrayed to us on social media. It's just not the reality. It's just not the world. This idea that passive income is something that you just get and the checks show up, that's not reality either. Now, a laundromat is certainly not a full-time job. 100%. I agree with that. But it's a lot of time job, and it takes a lot of time job. And if you're going to buy one, it's a lot of job that you have to do, unless you have the money to just write a check for $200,000 and then put somebody in charge of the thing to go and run it for you. And then somehow there's enough money left over after they've done that for you to pay yourself back a little bit at a time. The argument could be made, let's say that you pay somebody $25,000 a year, the thing's making 50. So then you're keeping $25,000. Well, $25,000 on 400 grand is what, 6%, 7% return. That's not a very good return given the 200,000 that you're putting out and the risk that you have. If there's a asset attached to it, like say it owns the land underneath of it, number one, you're not getting it for 200 grand. Number two, the deal gets that much harder to do at that point. But you get my point that there is never an easy business, passive income or not. Real estate is not an easy business, passive or not, whatever you want to call it. Passive just means it's not full-time. It doesn't mean it's not no time. In fact, many times passive businesses can become a lot of time. Every business that you buy the best return that you can do on that business is to grow the business. Many times for the kind of businesses that we're talking about, let's say the average business, not the one you'd read about in the Wall Street Journal or, in a magazine or hear out of some tech company, but real businesses like a laundromat. The best thing you can do is increase the throughput, increase the sales of that laundromat, because now every dollar, let's say the laundromat's doing $500,000 a year and you get it to go $550,000 a year, and it's got a gross profit on that extra $50,000 a year of, 70%. That leaves you with 30%. That means that you just made $15,000 more that year. So instead of making 50 grand, you now made $65,000, 50 grand that the company was making when you bought it. A year later, 65 grand a year on your money. And so and again, that's just loose math to make my point. But in that context, you just made $15,000 for your work. So how much work are you going to put into it then to maximize those sales, that revenue number? Because you can only improve the bottom line for these businesses by improving the top line and making sure the margin flows through to the bottom, or you cut expenses. You operate more lean than the existing owner. And many times it's usually rare for me to find a business, particularly an operating company, that there's not 3 to 5 points of margin that are being missed in that business by the owner. So that's the two ways that you can get your return. You buy the business, you increase the sales, and then you keep the profit from whatever additional sales that you have, obviously minus the margin it costs you to operate and to fulfill those additional sales, or you cut expenses. So all of that takes work. None of that happens overnight. None of that's easy. All of that takes a whole bunch of work. Again, if you are the idle rich and you want to buy something like that and you can write a check for 200 grand, the circumstances are somewhat different, although really not that much, because you'd still like that $500,000 a year laundromat to become a $650,000 or $700,000 or $800,000 a year laundromat, because that's how you're really going to make your money. I think that is the way to look at this. So when you buy something, get ready to jump in with both feet, because realistically, that thing, even if it were a laundromat, should eat up an inordinate amount of your time to make sure that you get your money.